Hi everybody, nice to see you all again, and welcome to another In Conversation With, where today we're joined with Jerome Harvey-Agyei from the Topé Project. Jerome, it's nice to see you as always. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jerome Harvey-Agyei. I am a person of love, humility, passion, and balance. So I embrace the darkness, like Batman, and also embrace the light. And I've had a really traumatic experience going through the care system, but also a really beautiful experience. So I've got the experience of both worlds going through the system, and I've used that to enable me to understand my journey, but also pass on some learnings.
Yeah.
We are not teachers, so a lot of people go out and speak and teach, and I don't profess to be a teacher. I'm a facilitator, and what that means is just facilitating space to grow and allow people to have conversations with themselves, show them the reflections of how beautiful they are, but also interrupt those thought patterns. So when people make complex problems, we make simple solutions. This journey is with the Topé Project started from a friend who committed suicide or took his own life, a better phrase words to use. And that took me on a personal journey to look at okay, there's something about what he did that mirrors me. And so I had to go on my own journey of self-discovery, self-love, actually self-awareness, all these different things that I wasn't available to me in the system as easy as trauma was. And we used those experiences to create this Christmas Day project, which was all about connecting fellow care leavers, so those that have left the care system, who've grown up in care. And from doing those first couple of years, I cried in love for the first time. So I was like, wow, this is that thing they call love, universal love, where, you feel you're crying, because I never used to understand it. When people are happy, they cried, because I always admitted it to sadness.
Yeah.
But it's that overwhelming emotion that you can cry in joy as well as sadness. And from that, we was like, we want to do more. It's infectious. When you get that feeling, you're like, wow, I want to do more. So what we did was we started to look into how we could add value to care leavers, but also the system as a whole, year round. So we started to look at how we can support social workers, how we can support the professional environment, how we can influence policymakers through simple solutions. And myself and my co-founder, Shalise, we looked at our skill sets and realized, okay, we're pretty good at training. We used to do a thing called Total Respect. And we've added a few more different little tools and a lot of experiential tools, so games and things like that. And then implemented that into strategies to help people to really just see their young people, show up for their young people, bring back the time and relationship back into their lives, so that it enables those environments where you can nurture young people, and then they go on and have the tools to kind of equip themselves and then go out and flourish in the world. So that's just kind of like an overview.
That's a lot, man. It's not just an overview. It's I feel like there's a lot of fireworks that should be exploding in the background when I think that no, seriously, I mean, we've known of each other, we've met a couple of times, but we've kind of this is the first time we're kind of sitting down and having a conversation, just kind of you and I, in terms of what it is that we do. And I know of the story from small conversations we've had before, but I think what I'm hearing from what you're saying is what I take from it is you're a really reflective worker. It's kind of you say, you're kind of the light and the dark. And I love the Batman analogy. I love the quote from the Batman. It's oh, I was born into the darkness. You know what
Raised in it.
Yeah. But embracing it as well. I think because I don't know what it's like for you when you're working with young people, but I think leaders like yourself, which I relate to, having got lived experience, sort of gone through the system in a particular way. You have to go through a form of transition, I think, to see it differently before you start engaging in the sector. Do you know what I mean? And I see that as kind of lived experience leadership. I kind of phrase the term go beyond your experiences, because it's being brought up in care is both light and dark. I remember a foster carer once saying to me, Luke, this isn't damage prevention, it's damage limitation. It was a foster carer that also said to me, you've got to care but not care. And they were kind of like really striking things to listen to as a kid, because I was kind of like, what does that mean? You don't care about it? I was like, yeah, of course we do, but we can't really care about the outcome. Do you know what I mean? Because that's up to you. You've got to do that. And yeah, and a lot of what you say, actually, I'm reflecting on that, is it's kind of like embracing both the light and the dark. But also when things have happened, especially with Topé, how do you take something that is such a difficult experience for yourself? And you're quite remarkable as a person to be able to kind of look at an experience and say, okay, this has happened. What positive things can we take from this? Because I suppose it's back to that whole thing, isn't it? Where actually it's never really the experience that impacts us. It's what we think about that experience that informs the way in which we move forward.
It's such a deep process, because with the care system, what I realized reflecting over time was I was given, and this is unconsciously through modeling, looking at the workers that I observed, and I was given permission to access trauma quicker than I was to access love. And that was because everything's reinforced by unconscious language, what you do, pity, all these things. So the meaning that I generally would create growing up to my experiences was self, shame, guilt, anger, all of these frustration, all of these feelings that didn't necessarily serve me all the time. Sometimes there's a need for anger, so you can go, okay, I'm angry about this, what am I going to do? But it's that what am I going to do next bit, which was not as easily available to me. And it's only when I started to reflect and I started to do a lot of self-development work, I realized that a lot of us don't have that added meaning. But the meaning's there. It's just we don't see it's there. We don't have the access to the meaning. So what a lot of the time I'm doing is saying, when they say, oh, I'm depressed, okay, are you depressed all the time? Yeah. Are you depressed right now? Yeah, I think so. Okay, I make them smile. Is that depression? No. Okay, so basically what we're doing is giving ourselves meaning to be depressed more and more and more and more, when we're not giving ourselves meaning to look at like what's around us, what's valuable around us. So I had a carer who basically, she didn't tell me, she showed me. And I didn't take it on until I started to reflect, like, oh my God, she was showing me. She was like, always read the small print. What the hell is she talking about? Always read the small print, which was like the small print of life. Everyone comes with the mask, but there's a small print behind that, and there's a reasoning and there's a meaning. And then there was this quote that I got from my coach, which was, if you blame or shame, you end the game. So if you blame externally, you feel shameful for not being able to do what you needed to do or couldn't control the situation, then you end the game. There's no responsibility. And he was just saying to me, like, you have to take absolute responsibility for your experience. Absolutely. So you can't control what you can't control, but it's on you now to control what you can. And so I started to look at, like, have I been missing a lens? And then as soon as I added down that lens, it's not to say that things don't happen and things don't go wrong. So in terms of the darkness, I feel it, I go through it, but I don't stay there. That is the difference. I move to the next position. And that's only a level of, because I, like yourself, and I heard it in you when I met you many years ago, I was luckily enough to be grown up around children's rights.
Yeah.
And so I got that foundational children's rights kind of empowerment, and realized that not everything's about me, it's about we. So whenever we move, and I think our era was lucky to experience, even to say that we're lucky is something, but we did experience that kind of the value of participation. And so for me, I think I went through an era where I found this is when participation works. I felt like I had a voice. I was exposed to different experiences. We had a service that worked amazingly, broke all sorts of barriers that now they would be like, wow, how do you do that? So I'm like, that was 10 years ago. So I think that, the beauty of having those balances within a care home, but also within services that provided, gave me the balance of like, okay, this is what works versus this is what doesn't work. Gave me new meaning, gave me new understanding, but also then that enables me to understand solutions. Whereas a lot of young people haven't had that access. may not have had the greatest of carers, had lots of training, so they don't get the same level of meaning that they could add to their lives.
Yeah.
But the trauma, no, what's really sad is I still had to go through a hell of a lot of trauma as a kind of level-headed young person. There was still, I couldn't escape how the system had traumatized me. And that still is a journey to this day. But the important thing is that I'm able to now understand it. It doesn't make me suffer the way it would have, you know, some years ago, where I could have been close to death. But so yeah, no, that I think for me, that's what I like to share, is just to give space to help people to go, look, this is the start, some stuff I do as an offering. Here's an experience that, you know, social workers, we can put you through to build an understanding. Now you've had that personal experience, you've made it personal to you.
Yeah.
Would you make the same decision in the same way?
Yeah, you actually give them, I suppose, another lens. And it's kind of like, I always find, I suppose, in our work, because we do the same thing, you know, we're both kind of like lived experience leaders providing training, like with similar and different messages. And it's kind of like, I always think that when I go and facilitate training, people are always looking for like the next thing that's going to fix everything. It's kind of like, yeah, we're going to bring them in, they're going to give us these techniques, and then they're going to improve outcomes. It's like, actually, no, you know, our view is just another way to kind of look at things. And if you approach a situation with multiple tools in your mind about what it is that you can do with a young person, and ours being one of them, then that's a good thing, you know. And I think that it's like what you said about kind of like having the lens where you would look at your experiences and you would see them differently. And I really like this concept of kind of like having ownership over your own life and ultimately being responsible for it. Because, dude, that's a tough pill to swallow, being in care where you're dependent on the state and the system, it enforces and enacts dependency until like the age when you're 18 years old, where that dependency basically kind of disappears and you have to just act and be independent. Yeah, it's a real big challenge. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your training and kind of the stuff that you do and how you help people kind of understand these concepts.
Yeah, so we do a training called What Would Love Do? So we're in the care system, right? And the care system professes to care through its language, but sadly, the language doesn't, and then the culture doesn't. So what we do is just remind people of the simplicity of giving space to care. So just to give an example, how do you get your space and time back? Or how do you write about a person you don't know? How do you safeguard a person you don't know? So that's fundamental in having a relationship. You need to know who you're writing about. Who are you writing this for? You know, who are you writing this document for? What do they read in 18 years down the line? Are you long-term thinking or short-term thinking? So what we do is we do some stuff around how are you communicating? But first we start with you. How are you? Because if you're not okay and you've got to deal with a load of different trauma coming your way, how the hell are you going to do that, first of all, which is probably not manageable. Once we get to you, we give you some tools. We don't tell you what you need to do. We give you tools, and then however you receive those tools and take those tools, it will start to build an awareness. Because my goal is to help you to have an awareness about self, which then gives you awareness about external. So you're able to see a child and meet a child where they're at and respond to their needs. And don't assume you know their needs. So it's just using a thing called nonviolent communication and helping them to understand that they're not assuming their needs. Because a lot of social workers in the past that we've seen that become doctors, they start diagnosing illnesses and we think they've got this and that. And you're like, how do you actually know this? Have you checked in with the child? Have you checked in with a young person? Are you assuming? Because you know, assumptions make an ass out of you and me. So yeah, so we do stuff around communication, real life. What does it mean to safeguard a child and young person in reality? Because all this safeguarding crap that we've got at the moment actually doesn't safeguard young people. It safeguards you, but doesn't safeguard a young person. So how do we treat that? What does it mean in reality? So putting you in young people's shoes. So what are the experiences? So there's things we do which I make it very personal, because I want you to feel how we feel in care through games and things like that. And then as soon as you tune into you and and you have that sense of loss or whatever it is, you get it. You're like, oh damn, that simple exercise made me realize, okay,
yeah,
that's what I'm doing to a child or young person. So a lot of it's putting you through experiences, it's putting you through shoes. It's how do you incorporate love, this universal love, not this necessarily hugs and all these things, but what does actually love really mean? What does care mean in this environment? How are you communicating consciously and unconsciously? You know, how are you effectively communicating? What are your strategies? How are you giving time? It's basically simplifying the complexity of what we've been learning around safeguarding, all of this stuff. I've worked with thousands of young people like yourself, Luke, over the many years. I've never had one issue with any young person. So that tells me there's something about the way we communicate. There might be something in us understanding, having the X-ray vision showing up, but I've never had an issue. You know, I've seen issues, we've responded, and I've always been able to communicate to that person. And my goal is to help you to build independency.
Yeah.
So not dependency, as we've said before, because that's a failure on our part. If they can't be independent, then it's a failure. And what we've done is we've built dependency. We tell them to go to the job center. We don't help them to aspire to be business owners. We're the government's kids. We should be some of the best off, you know.
Queen's our grandma, do you know what I mean? Like,
You know what I mean?
I understand. It's like they're corporate parents, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, I hope I go and visit that palace one day. And it's gone. Sorry, were you going to continue?
Yeah, no, I was gonna, there's some other things we cover around the difference between participation and engagement.
Right.
And, you know, participation models that work, ideas around, you know, creating ideas. I'm all about solutions. So you give me an aim, I'll come up with solutions in terms of goal setting.
Yeah.
Strategy around like simple business. So helping young people with simple business. So knowing what, you know, having a vision statement, mission, values, what's on your menu, how are you going to deliver, smart targets, all of that stuff. So if people wanted that, that's just throwaway stuff that I've got. But anything that just helps people to simplify their work, strategize better, give your time back. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking at the system in terms of how do we get social workers, managers, and all of these workers who work in young people's lives to have their time back through using the creative notions of digital technology. Absolutely. So using pictures, voice notes, recordings, so that a file is not just a piece of paper written, there's a personality behind it. I've recently seen referrals where carers are explaining the young person's need to new carers. Yeah, they struggle with this, and I'm like, beautiful, saves you time, it's more personable, but also those can be transcripted. So it's just looking at what boroughs can explore with this new age. So I've done a lot of consultation around stuff like that. Recently, I've been doing a lot of things around equality and diversity. What does that actually mean? How to have those difficult conversations? Because we're like, when you look at us as a family, like I see you as a family member because I respect that you've been through that whole, we're a bunch of all sorts of different kids from all sorts of backgrounds, with all sorts of trauma. So actually, we're some of the best placed people to talk on equality and diversity. So we help people with that kind of stuff as well around, you know, how do you have difficult conversations that lead to meaningful solutions and powerful insights? How do you see your workers? How do you see your children and young people, and then respond to those needs?
So for organizations that would want to be ringing you up and getting involved, it's essentially kind of like that you can facilitate training that gives them a completely different lens. But I suppose it's that empathetic training. I mean, I really recognize the games that you play because I played them myself, and it's kind of funny because you'll play a game with an audience. Now, imagine people watching this will be like, oh no, I don't know if this is right for our staff. But actually, you know, it really is, because it's a safe space for you to be able to engage with an emotion that a young person feels and be able to explore it through conversation without harming anybody. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the thing, is it's like when we're working with young people that are experiencing these emotions, they all want to make a difference. And I always see this kind of blockage in staff where they're like, I don't know what to say. You know, they've just said something to me. It's making me feel this way. And they panic usually because they don't want to cause further harm. Like if I say something wrong. And I think the type of training that you provide and facilitate gives them a space to kind of say, okay, how do you feel now? You know, like, and what's going on for you? And let's discuss it. And also, like, a lot of people I've had, if you know, if I was to say my training, challenge that, be like, oh, this isn't okay. It's like, but this is what we do to young people on a daily basis. So, you know, if we don't feel it's okay in a facilitation room, how does young people feel when we're doing that on a daily basis? And it's good to explore this and how it makes us feel and how we're triggered, which is what you're saying, you know. And I think as well, some of the stuff that you've said, it sounds around unconscious bias, you know, like, and organizational culture. So like, you know, I work with different organizations like yourself, and I always find depending on what part of the country I'm in, depending on what archetype of person I'm working with, depends on the values of that particular culture and that space. And that's all prevalent and present, you know, in your work. And it's about saying to people, like, recognizing like our unconscious bias and like how we think and feel about the world and the people within it, and recognizing how we're going to operate towards them. And this is underpinned by, you know, psychological studies, which we can throw in there if needed. So
yes.
your training is really kind of like influential in the space of, it provides not only insights and empathy to kind of like, you know, what it's like, and to put yourself in the safe shoes of a young person. But you've also got a lot of authority, because I kind of see empathy and authority, which is something that I always like to think of, in that, you know, you've worked with 1,000 children, but you've never had the challenge. And there is something in that, for sure, that I think lived experience leaders and those that have got both the personal and professional experiences can really harness, because you like you said, read the small print. You know, I suppose that is something that you're teaching and doing. You know, you can see that small print. So when you're presented with a mask of a young person that is trying to, you know, present something to you because of whatever's going on behind that, that you've got the ability to cut through it. And I genuinely believe that can be taught as well. And I think it's crucial what you facilitate, because what you facilitate is engaging people in the experiences to understand what that's like. So, and then the second arm of your work is kind of like consultancy. So if organizations are going to kind of want to understand specifically, you know, how do you engage with young people using digital technologies? Because I mean, that's where young people are at. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook. The second you mention that to a local authority, they're like, safeguarding, you know, like you said, safeguarding what? Well, because they're on it anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's actually dangerous for us to not to be on it, because we can't monitor it. Do you know what I mean? So they're on it anyway. You can remove phones, you can say no, they'll find a way. So actually, we as an organization need to embrace that. If anything, so we can safeguard it, so we can watch and monitor and see. And also, it's a fun space for us to be in. It's how we can build relationships. Only today I was speaking to somebody, a young person, who said, I FaceTime my social worker 6 times in a week, which was great. It was just every now and then. And if I'd not have done that, I'd have been meeting her once a month. And, you know, so there's this kind of embrace of that. Yeah, exactly. And I've not spoke to the social worker. I mean, I you know, but I imagine like that's what social workers want to do. They want to be able to communicate with their young people and feel there's value and worth in their work. So yeah, really amazing, the kind of like these two sort of particular services that you're providing, and also like the lens that you bring into that landscape. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of saying that, you know, you're a facilitator who really understands these experiences and how to own and reflect upon one's own experiences, which is beautiful for young people to be able to look up to you and see that, but also beautiful for staff to be able to go, okay, this is something I can also encourage my young people to do, and recognize that I'm not the person that can fix this situation. I can only give a young person a relationship, this unconditional love, and enable them to see their experiences in the way that allows them to take them forward in the way that they want to, and the way that they can kind of internalize and take goodness from it.
You encapsulated it so beautifully. Like, it's that, and to be fair, when it comes to, I think you can't question someone's experience. So although I've had that before, so we did some work in Moldova where I was challenged about the level of trauma I had experienced, because in that country, they didn't think people in London would go through the same level of experience. But it's interesting because you see that from other countries, a lot of the kids were going into care because of poverty, whereas in the UK, it's mainly abuse. So it was really interesting dynamic, and it was really good to help them to see that, you know, actually a lot of us go in because of abuse, and they were like, what? Oh my God, this is crazy. And it was like, it's crazy that you're going into care because of poverty. but then they tend to go into care and be abused. So it's the opposite. But what was really good about doing the work in Moldova was challenging ourselves to look at, can this surpass the language barrier? Because, you know, we get so comfortable in language, and somehow just using the energy and facial expressions and looking and showing love and holding them. They got it. And it was just beautiful. Like, I was crying, like we had the workers, young people crying, and just really kind of sharing that beautiful space. And then we did it in Czech Republic as well, which was good because we got them to look at how they make change because they were saying that the politicians weren't listening to them, and there was a fear. So he said, give away your ideas, let them have it, and then tell them it's yours. And they did that, and they got what they wanted. So it's just like theory of, you know, there's theories of change, but we talk about, you know, practicalities to change. So how do you practically make change? Sometimes you might have to boost egos, whatever it is, but we've got to make this change happen. And then once it's in place, even if it's tokenistic, once it's in place, it starts to feel meaningful, because people start to say, actually, having young people, one, is fun. It makes our work day go much more quicker. It makes our work interesting. We can get more creative. There's just so many benefits compared to flaws. So it's like, why have we got the fear there when actually this is good? So that's where a lot of my consultancy has just naturally taken place. I'm like, I just say to people, well, why have you not?
Yeah.
Well, what's the worst that can happen here?
Yeah.
What are you afraid of?
Well, I think like it's a lot of it's around illusions, isn't it? It's kind of like, I suppose, like I don't know, I've worked with many different organizations like yourself and many different cultures, and I think that that's quite what you explained there is quite prevalent. Is there's this kind of illusion of fear, like, yeah, but if I involve young people in this, like, something could go wrong. And in fact, no, they just need to fill in this survey or go to the Children in Care Council or the Leaving Care Forum and share their views while eating pizza. You know, it's kind of like, it's one way to engage with a group of young people, but participation is a variety of activities. And I think like what I recognize in what you're saying also is it's like creating a platform and a space for young people to be able to share their experience and recognizing that they're like our family. So, you know, like, you know, our children, if we have family, for example, like are developing, they rely on us to develop, and our children will make mistakes. They'll do stupid stuff. They'll be naive. Do you know what I mean? And that's a fun bit. You know, you're compassionate to your own kids, and you're kind of like, you know, it's not okay to do that, or, you know, maybe. And I think maybe because of the relationship that's slightly different with young people in care, and because there's this kind of like the fact that we call it corporate parenting, we still have this kind of corporate side in our minds. It's just like, oh, but what if they make a mistake in that meeting, or they do this and they do that? Well, we as an organization need to learn how to deal with that when it happens, not try and stop it from happening or try and change it from happening, you know. And what you're saying there, the vision that I get is kind of this vibrancy of work. So this kind of like a vibrant working environment that has young people around and present, that are involved in conversations. And what we're doing is we're using our specialist knowledge as leaders, as directors, as strategists, as trainers to kind of listen to them and jump on that creative bandwagon with them. They'll come up with a really naive idea, like, I don't know, we should do this one thing, and everyone will be thinking the system just won't allow that. So that's, you know, it's just. Whereas, what can we actually take from that? And it's a great idea, but we can't do it because of this. But have you thought about that? And maybe I can help with this. And, you know, exploring with them, and so much beautiful stuff comes from that. So, it definitely requires people like yourself to be around the table, actually, because I think that what I see in terms of consultancy, right, you know, especially in social care and lots of spaces, you get these kind of management consultants and change consultants in that follow the theory of change or the latest thing, and then they'll set up some focus groups of young people, and there's this separation of this bouncing to and from. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like you're an expert in management, you're an expert in participation, you're an expert in both. You're kind of like an intersection of it where you can kind of communicate. I love the way you said about stroking egos. You know what I mean? You can communicate at an incredibly high level to different audiences incredibly well, and you can go and communicate to young people as if like you've been there your whole life, you know, and you've got that. That's an incredible talent that is valuable for lots of organizations working with children, to recognize that, you know, you can have lived experience. You can then go on to be a lived experience professional, like where You know, I think about mine now. People still see me. I don't know if this is the same for you. It's like, you know, I had it the other day. Hey, you want to come and share your story and entertain our foster carers? I was like, what? What you see me as you see me as an entertainer? Is that really? Is that and just someone
Is that what I am?
share a story? Do you know what I mean? Like you're not informed. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's rude and it's not okay. But I think that's the culture that we have kind of like found ourselves in. So then, people can't see beyond that. So, and it's kind of like, you know, you're more than your story. And I think that I laugh now because like I've done this job as long as I was in care. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like I have this equal lived experience and professional experience, but still people get stuck on that's the care leaver that can do that story. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, this is someone that's like, you know, there was a fellow at the University of Oxford, which you're not informed on, and you add so much value to these spaces where you can go in and say, you know, I'm equally a professional and I'm equally, you know, lived experience, and it's the combination of both.
I think that's the beauty of it, because I've had that background, you know, working in participation and advocacy. So I've gone from lived experience to professional, still seen as a young person and, you know, the Bernardo's boy or whatever it was. But I've then gone into like applying those, not having that insight, as we would call it, the X-ray vision into trauma and what it feels like, experiences, how they get there. We can see a child or a young person when they're there without even all these theories that have all of a sudden come out. But it's mad because I found myself working with professionals more than young people, because that's the ripple effect you need to have. It's actually we need to support you to see and have the tools to be equipped to deal with these young people, so then they can then emulate you and then pass it on with their peers and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the kind of title of our training came from, What Would Love Do? Because when you say that to people, it's okay, so what would love do? Well, we would find a way. Exactly. So find a way. It's as simple as that. Oh, I'm really tired. You have a choice. What would love do? Would love take you out of this or keep you in? What is it going to do? Make a decision. Oh, I can make a choice. You've always got a choice. It's down to you. But what we need to do is either build you in resilience, or you get out. It's as simple as that. Are you resilient enough to stay in the system and it not traumatize you and you not traumatize kids? Or can we give you the tools that you can show up despite what the system has and the rules and all that, and make sure that you give a young person a meaningful experience no matter what time you have, that 18 years down the line, they look down and they said, you know what, on reflection, that person gave me some good time, and because of that, I want to give someone else. I want to pass this on. And that's all we say. It's like, it's not about us. All we're saying is, if you want to honor me, pass it on. I don't give a damn about any accolades, anyone saying, well done, Jerome, none of that. Pass it on. That's what I'm saying. That's why I want blueprints. I'm learning still. I'm getting loads of tools. It's always developing, always changing, always adding, looking at foods. We're looking at, you know, spiritual stuff. We're looking at things that serve different communities. So you can just have a pool of knowledge, which you can, with blueprints about how to have healthy, meaningful relationships. And then that filters out. And not only in the care system, but we have an impact on the wider system. So the schooling system, NHS, you know, policing, all of those different areas we've touched in because of having that fundamental kind of universal love.
It's powerful. I mean, and I can feel it once when you say it, and two, I can see it as well, because it's kind of like, I mean, you're giving so many important messages to so many people. This isn't actually, I suppose, just a way of supporting children, but a way of being in life. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think you can get into the depths of that. And I imagine also when you go through and facilitate with your professionals or adults, they'll reflect upon their own lives as well. I can imagine there'll be lots of stuff that will bring it up for them, and they'll be kind of like, oh, actually, I've realized X, Y, and Z, which is special. It's really special. I'm interested in kind of like, so one, just to kind of comment back on that, you're working more with adults now than young people, and I recognize that transition, and it's quite a challenging one, because it's kind of like, I think through and through working with young people, you know you're going to have impact, and but I think like to as an organization, it's, or as any project or anything evolves, giving these tools to other people is going to get more impact and more reach in the long run. So, but I recognize there's kind of like a grieving, isn't there, sometimes when you kind of go from working with what you're really good at with young people and then trying to do this moving forward. And I think that's an interesting development as a professional, especially as a lived experience professional who can really relate to their peers. and really knows that they can support their peers, and then kind of having to somewhat come away from that to go into the next phase of this work. So I think it's an important thing just to highlight that, because I know that other lived experience leaders will be watching this. They'll be incredibly great with young people, but at the same time, they'll be wanting to grow their organizations, grow their projects, and get further reach. And they'll see themselves going more into this kind of adult, working with adults naturally. And just to kind of let them know that, like, we recognize that transition, and it's good. But at the same time, there is a sense of kind of loss and bereavement, because you're losing, or you're moving away from such an important piece of work with direct work with young people. But just remember that they're inspiring, and you're inspiring other young people to do the same, just as you did, and you will go on to do.
Thank you,
Let me hear some of the impacts that, like, what are people saying about the sort of stuff that you've been facilitating? So, like, you know, what are your delegates saying about your training?
I mean, with the stuff we do with young people, so we've got a thing that I've labeled it now called In Power. So it's the power of the in. It's all about you seeing yourself in a different light, added meaning, looking at. So I did it with a group of young people in Hertfordshire, and it was a bit of a test, because I was like, oh, are these tools too deep, man? Because we're directly addressing pain and we're turning it into love. So the pain to positivity is kind of where that came from. And we did it with the young people, and wow, they were like, yo, like, there was one particular girl who spoke on her experiences of her trauma, but because we get them to, like, leave it in love, you have to transform this into love. And she did it, and she went from not really wanting to be in the group the first day. She's like, I'm not coming back, this is too much. I was like, please, man, see it out. You know, you've already started half the process, you're halfway there. And then the next day she did it. She stood up, she spoke in front of everyone, but she did it with such, like, passion.
Yeah,
we was all crying, all of us were crying.
Wow.
And what she didn't realize is that unlocked something not only for her but the whole room. And that was in the feedback. So the feedback was like, this was one of the most life-changing moments. It wasn't me, it was actually them. I just created the space that they could look at themselves and give themselves new meaning. But what was interesting was she physically had a change. So she physically, something happened because she had let go of that burden and she took her power back. She then she's like, oh, I haven't got a back pain anymore. Oh, I feel light. I was like, I don't know what this is. She's like, what did you do, Jerome? I was like, I didn't do nothing. That was all you. I just gave you the right questions to ask yourself. That was all it is. And then we held the space. So in terms of the young people, I think that was one of my most beautiful, other than when we went to Moldova and Czech Republic with Shalise, and you're speaking to kids who are not speaking your language, and you're trying to get through these messages, but you're making them do games and all these things. And again, they went off and made changes in their country. We worked with Moldova, helped them to set up the first care leaver service in the country, and they've gone on to do really great things. So there's been tangible actions from that side. In terms of the professional side of things, I've been working with a company, Center for Public Impact, and they're globally. So I worked with their American team. This is all online as well. The other stuff was in person. So this online stuff, I've been looking at kind of like what we call listening circles, just hearing how the organization feels, and then kind of reflecting it back, and then putting in questions that will help them to move from pain to now, how do we make workers to feel valued? And then enabling beautiful conversations, deeper connections, and then a better working environment. So that's been beautiful. I did it in America and the North American team. Then they wanted me to do Europe and Australia and a few other places.
I'm on global.
It's been
We're
interesting.
not going to have you in the UK for very long, are we, man? You're going to be ringing you next time. You'll be like, all right, bro, I'm just in Hollywood.
We did some stuff with, I've done some stuff with Lumos as well, where we did, again, a lot of that international work came through them as well, around supporting kids in care from other countries. So in Kenya, Haiti, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Moldova, Australia, New York. So we've been advising their advocates on how to engage meaningfully with young person. So the participation model of how do you because we obviously, engagement is just speaking to young people about a topic you come up with. Whereas participation is, young people are involved in the design the development and the delivery. So we help them to look at what does it mean to involve young people into design. Oh, actually, they design the questions you ask about your organization. They design, what does your service look like? How does it feel? Who's your target market? So they're involved in that, as they would say now, co-production, but they're paid in some sort of way. They've got the resources to access whatever they need to access to have a meaningful involvement in your organizations. And then you've got the development. So looking at how young people are involved in that development, what skills, again, are they paid for their time? Are their travels paid for? Food? How are they feeling? What skills are they learning? What exposure do they have? All of that stuff. And then the delivery. So are they out there with you? If anything, are they the ones just doing it and you can take a step back? Have they been empowered enough to do that? And so looking at those areas.
Devolving power. It's like,
Trust me.
Man, I love it. It's, we could talk about this for hours, and I think actually we should maybe probably do some more in conversations with about some of the specifics of participation, because I think like it's amazing in terms of like everything you say I relate to, and I'm kind of nodding my head and I'm thinking like, I mean, I work in strategy, so my role is like listening to you and saying, okay, how do we write this down into a particular document and then disseminate the document through training so everyone understands it? So it's like, one of the things is that rules of engagement. So it's like, you know, if you're going to get young people to develop services, develop them first. Because there's this culture, isn't there, where it's like, okay, we want young people to come and do interviews, but these are the questions that you're going to ask. And in fact, you've got no power or weight in the decision-making process. So it's like, actually, you just want them to sit there and ask a question that you've given them. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, so how have we developed them first and foremost to be able to understand what an interview is and be able to have interview skills and see that? And what interview process, where were they designed in? How were they involved in the design, which is what you were saying? I remember one organization that invited us to it. Their young people designed an interview process for foster carers, or for the tender for fostering placements in a sports hall. They'd open the doors, all of the providers at the same time.
I love that.
They're like looking at each other like, that's the National Fostering Agency, that's this one, that's that name, that's Core Assets, that's all these people, there's all these fostering agencies there. And they're all like, why are we all here at the same time? And then these doors opened, everyone rushed in the middle of the room, and then all around the sports hall were these like small speed dating tables, and young people sat on them, and it was like 2 minutes at each table, speed dating.
I love that.
They designed the whole thing, and it was that chose the fostering agency, and I thought, genius. You know, it's like, when back to our earlier conversation of like, when people get fearful of things that are not going to work, it goes wrong. It's like, you know, what's going to go wrong is if you invite a young person. What will go wrong, guarantees, if you say to a young person, come and ask this question in this interview panel, and then, you know, thank you very much. That'll go wrong, because that's not engaging, that's not supporting young people. You know, but what goes right is when you hand that over and you use your skills and your knowledge to, like, you know, author that idea, you know, kind of say, you know, you've come up with it, we're going to author it with you, and like, boom, the beauty of it.
Luke, you're a true participation man.
Yeah,
I love it.
Excellent to know. And I think like means like meets like. So
yes.
I think that's why you and I get along so well. Right, it's coming to the end of our conversation. So I just kind of wanted to, like, there's two things I want to ask you to finish off with. Is one, so I know straight away virtual school heads watching this, they need to be contacting you to bring you in and to do some work with their young people. Again, you know, participation services as well can do that. And then, you know, anybody that's working in social work, or I see with young people, so that's teachers, you know, foster carers, they should also experience your training. So I think, you know, anybody that's watching this that is working directly with foster carers, with social workers, they need to be contacting you, but virtual school heads for sure, because I think there's a lot of powerful work you just shared with that story, with that young person who, like, physically changed and went through that kind of, like, and also changed the energy of the room. It was powerful, you know. And one of the things that I've taken away is kind of like, you know, how can we create a space, I suppose, and it's my maybe call to action to, like, people that would commission you, like, you know, how can we create a space where young people will cry from love and not from sadness? And I think that's what you create. Do you know what I mean? Like, how can we create that space? Well, it's right here. And, you know, with everything going on with young people's mental health at the moment, and young people being more in tune with their emotions, what a beautiful way to redefine a narrative, but to bring you in. So how do people find out about your work?
I think so. I would define it as, creating space for authentic connections. So, you know, being able to be real, and that is in a space with young people or a space with professionals. What we do is create that space. We remove the layers of crap. We basically remove the mask. You you can't lie to us, because we've been trained to see lies. We've been trained to see if you care, because that is unfortunately, but fortunately for us in the professional environment, it's really a powerful tool to have. So we will see you. You can't avoid us. And I bet you see it all the time, Luke.
Comment.
but yeah, for me, my email is probably the best way to get me. If you want to see what I do, you can go on YouTube and search my name, Jerome Harvey-Agyei, or you can go on LinkedIn, or you can go on Twitter. I'm not really on Twitter as much, or Instagram. We had a website, so we had www.thetopéproject.org, but it's been hacked by somebody. So I don't know who's hacked it. Someone's hacked it, but we're in the process of redeveloping a website so that people can connect to something. So yeah, I would have normally given my website, but obviously.
So hopefully by the time that, because it's September now, but it's going to be kind of January when this is launched. Yeah. So hopefully by that time it'll be live, and we'll have a conversation offline as well to see if there's some support we can give you on that. And as well, bro, we're going to put you on the Care Leaders website as one of the people that we like and know. So we'll make sure that on our website, everything that is available for people to come on and to find out about, it's all there as well. So
it's through you, bro. People can only get to me through you in this care world now, because I think there's the thing with me at the moment is that I'm being pulled left, right, and center. So I'm saying that if anyone wants to get in contact, they have to contact the Care Leaders. Care Leaders, I should say.
Yeah, well, we will be on there. I mean, you are, you're one of our friends. We're family, and I think that's the Care Leaders is a space for everybody, and it's kind of like and you'll be alongside lots of other people, and it's good for me, because I think kind of my vision for all of this is like how you've created a space for young people. I'm like, how do I create a space for lived experience leaders, where we can support each other and develop each other. So that makes sense. That's what's in it for me, is like how do we create a space where as lived experience leaders we can connect and share the work that we do, because we all work in very similar ways, but yet we all do very specific things, which is what I really like. And kind of like as a consortium, or a community, or as a group of people, like trying to get our heads together and understand. And we're filming this now in September, where this idea is still fresh, but in January when we're all meeting together as leaders, are saying, okay, how do we use this space to develop our work further is what I want. But from our point of view, it's a platform for everybody to be able to kind of share their work in any way that they want. So there's going to be a space for you and everybody, and we're going to shout and scream about the work that you're doing.
Thank you, man. And I know that there's a load of others on the team who are amazing. So for me, it's also about plugging those stories, because sometimes I'm like, I would be good at addressing this, but I think like Aaliyah, for instance, would be great. She has that experience in terms of dealing with young girls and things like that. So I also know my place. Like I know when to take a step back, and actually there's a person who will be able to give that rightful kind of information that is targeted, if that makes sense. So for me, I know my thing is care leavers and on a general, and professionals, and dealing with suicide and trauma and things like that. But when it comes to certain types of trauma, I would take a step back, because I know my place, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. The amount of work I give away, because I'm kind of like, no, I can't help in adoption because I've got no experience in that at all.
Same. I
can't. No, I can't really understand. I can't run a girls program because or a girls only program. So absolutely, man. But it's good. This is why, kind of, I think what we're creating is kind of a new space of leadership, which is kind of accepting, like in all spaces of leadership, people have got specific areas of knowledge. What makes us different and dynamic is that our area of knowledge is not just informed by what we've learned as professionals, but what we've gone through personally. So and have gone through that transition. So last thing I want to say, and I'm asking this to everybody, is kind of like, and I'll say it slowly so you can, because I know it's not a question we've agreed, but like, if you had a message to give to any young people that were watching this video today, what would that message be?
I think the clear one for me would be, you are important. Whether whatever anyone says outside of you, you are important. So what will you do to understand how important but also beautiful you are? You know, and when I say that, is that the mechanism of your, if we look at your very body and the fact that it's intelligent, every single cell in your body is super intelligent. And that gave me a bit more meaning. And I just think what you need to do is, if you're having that kind of difficult time, or you're not understanding the meaning, like the other side of life, the positive side, start to look at your body as a mechanism. It represents the world around you. It's a beautiful mechanism. It works without you even thinking. You breathe, you're intelligent, you're able to see. If you can see, you're able to hear, all these different things. That it's a beautiful creation. So tune into how important and beautiful you are, and then you will start to see how much, like I call it hero. Obviously we're not heroes, but we have hero powers in terms of we're able to do things when we're able to tune in. So I'd always say to people, it's, if you are struggling with fitting into this world, you don't need to, because you need to go in within your world, because you represent the universe. And once you start to understand who you are, how beautiful your mechanism, this body is, the world will become easier, because you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You don't need to expect anything from anyone. You just flow. You have a balance. You understand that your darkness serves a purpose and your light serves a purpose, and don't be ashamed of any of them. Like, we all have crap, we all have good, but it's just about understanding this is the balance of life. And so I'd just say, just understand that, you know, don't judge yourself on the stuff that's happened, the trauma. Those are things outside of you can't control. What can you control about you? How can you tune in and understand who you are, so then you can have a balanced experience? I'm not saying you're going to have the most amazing experience, it's going to be a fairy tale, but a balanced experience where you're able to make sense of life and really experience this time, because we don't know how long we have. So for me, it's just about, you know, helping you to see this creation, this time that we have, use it, because you don't know. And so and for me, I just want to implore people to explore what there is out there, because it's a beautiful thing if you allow it to be. So yeah, once you start to go in, which is a lot more simple than the world communicates to us to do, it starts to become a beautiful thing. So yeah, just understand that you're important and you're worth exploring in terms of, you know, the beauty of you.
Yeah, go in. And yeah, bro, that is I mean, you've got me there. I'm kind of like, yeah, I think there's a reflection point there for all of us to take, and is to kind of stop looking and just kind of experience life. And it's beautiful, man. And yeah, every young person listening to this is important, as is everybody. So bro, I've absolutely loved having a conversation with you today. I know that we're going to do more. Yeah, so I will catch up with you very soon. And yeah, thank you for everybody that's come to listen today. And yeah, I'll see you all soon.
It's been a pleasure.
Take it easy, man.